In this session, we will cover the dangers of driving after consuming alcohol and other drugs. We will discuss how alcohol affects blood alcohol levels, how alcohol and other drugs affect driving abilities, and how the body eliminates alcohol. Since we have covered getting ready to drive and effective visual awareness, we are at the top of our game, visually, physically, and cognitively prepared to drive. However, some short-term factors can affect driving ability, factors that could cause drivers to be impaired. Earlier, we talked about how driver-related factors cause far more collisions than factors related to vehicles, such as breakdowns or roadway factors. A driver's behavior certainly plays into that, such as speeding, tailgating, looking away from the road, and driving distracted. This also includes the behaviors of drivers around them. But the driver's condition when they drive also plays a huge role. One of the most significant driver-related factors is the degree to which a driver is impaired. Alcohol, medications, over-the-counter meds, illicit drugs, and even drowsiness and fatigue contribute to a driver's impairment. One of the most common impairments among drivers results from consuming alcohol. Nationally, nearly 1 out of every 3 collisions involve alcohol. Each day, almost 30 people are killed in alcohol-related collisions. That means 5 people will die in the time it takes you to finish this 4-hour course. Someone is injured in a drunk driving crash almost every 90 seconds. 160 drunk driving injuries will happen in the time it takes you to finish this course. About 1/3 of all drivers will be involved in an alcohol-related crash at some point in their lives. In Tennessee, over 25% of driving fatalities are related to drivers under the influence of alcohol. 33% of fatal crashes involve drivers under the influence. Alcohol is involved in more fatal crashes than any other single factor. The reason is simple when we look again at the driving formula: perceive, decision, and action. Alcohol impairs driving ability as its depressant effects slow the central nervous system, decreasing all drivers' ability to perceive essential events in the traffic scene. Make good decisions based on those perceptions and take timely and effective action to reduce risk and avoid collisions. Some people think that they can hold their liquor and their driving ability is not impaired. Nothing could be further from the truth. Alcohol affects their driving ability. Nobody is immune to the effects of alcohol. Because alcohol affects their ability to judge things appropriately. They end up judging that the alcohol has not affected them when the effects have already taken place. Let's cover a few points and see where you are with your knowledge about alcohol. Everyone knows that driving after drinking alcohol can be a disastrous combination. We have all seen the billboards and commercials, and some of us have even experienced a drunk driving tragedy in our own lives. This is why one of the key concepts of this module is to help drivers gain an even deeper understanding of how and why alcohol negatively affects driving abilities. However, it is not only alcohol that can impair one's driving abilities. As you will discuss, prescription drugs, illegal drugs, and even cold medicines and other over-the-counter medications can be dangerous when mixed with driving. A person's driving abilities can be temporarily impaired for many reasons: driving without enough rest, emotional stress, and being distracted all impair a driver's ability to maintain control over a vehicle and stay safe. So can drinking alcohol before driving. Alcohol can negatively affect every function involved in driving, and it significantly increases your chances of causing a collision. Each year, more than 10,000 people are killed in alcohol-related motor vehicle crashes. Statistically speaking, alcohol and driving are a deadly combination. Now let's see where your current knowledge of alcohol is with 6 questions. Is alcohol a drug? True, alcohol is indeed a drug as it alters the body's functioning. BAC stands for blood alcohol content. False. It stands for blood alcohol concentration. Per serving, light beer has both fewer calories and less alcohol than regular strength beer. Light beer does have less alcohol than regular beer for each equal-sized serving. A driver cannot be charged with drunk driving with a blood alcohol level below 0.08. False. A driver could be charged with drunk driving at any BAC above 0. Reaction time is the first ability affected by alcohol. False. Judgment and decision-making abilities are the first abilities affected. Reaction time is the second ability involved. On average, the body eliminates alcohol at 1 drink per hour. False. The old rule of thumb of 1 per hour is false. It takes longer. You can see how this wife's tale could get a driver into trouble. Some of the answers may be a bit surprising. It turns out that there has been a lot of misinformation provided to the public about alcohol. Unfortunately, the public's facts are incorrect as many are myths. Let's look more deeply at some of the information we just covered. Our first question: alcohol is a drug. The definition of a drug is any substance taken by a person to achieve an altered physical or mental state, real or imagined. Drugs have a variety of effects on the human body. Alcohol is a depressant. Depressants slow down the central nervous system, which consists of the brain and the spinal cord. The central nervous system receives, processes, and responds to sensory information. The central nervous system affects areas of human performance important to driving. Alcohol depressant effects on the central nervous system reduce every driver's ability to perceive important effects in the traffic scene, to make good decisions based on what they perceive, and take effective and timely action on those decisions. The bottom line is that alcohol is a drug that affects every aspect of driving ability. Our second question: BAC. BAC stands for blood alcohol content. BAC actually stands for blood alcohol concentration, which is the ratio between the amount of alcohol and the amount of blood and other body fluids. BAC is expressed as a percent of alcohol in the blood. In most states, the legal limit is 0.08%, which means 0.08% of the blood is alcohol. You may also hear the alcohol concentration in the blood referred to as blood alcohol levels. To hear someone say BAC stands for blood alcohol content is common. However, there are differences between content and concentration. When you investigate content versus concentration, although you may think they are the same, there are significant differences. Content versus concentration. If two different sized people consume the same amount of alcohol, they will have the exact content of alcohol in their bodies. However, because they are different in size, each will have a different blood alcohol concentration. That is the difference between content and concentration. To demonstrate further, let's say this man weighs 150 pounds and this man weighs 300 pounds. If each drank one of these bourbons on the rocks, the alcohol would be absorbed throughout their bodies. As you would assume, the alcohol is more concentrated in the smaller person. This means the BAC of the 150-pound man will be higher since the alcohol is more concentrated in the 150-pound person compared to the 300-pound person. Although it is technical, the differences between concentration and content are meaningful. Now, let's discuss factors that affect blood alcohol concentration. Factors that impact blood alcohol concentration are body weight, strength of the drink, size of the drink, and time spent drinking. As we previously discussed, body weight can significantly impact a person's BAC. A smaller person's body will contain less blood to mix with the alcohol, resulting in a higher BAC than someone larger. The strength of the alcoholic beverage can affect the BAC. The higher the strength, the higher the resulting BAC. When we discuss the strength of an alcoholic beverage, we are talking about the percentage of alcohol in the drink. Often, alcohol containers provide proof of the drink, not the percentage of alcohol. There is a formula to determine the percentage of alcohol based on proof. The proof of the alcohol divided by 2 will give you the alcohol percentage. As you can see from this picture, the alcohol percentage is 50, and the proof is 100. The proof 100 divided by 2 gives you the percentage of alcohol 50. The size of the drink will impact the BAC too. Of course, if a person drinks larger beverages of the same alcoholic strength, the resulting BAC will be higher. The time spent consuming alcohol plays a significant role in the BAC. The shorter the time between drinks, the higher the BAC. Let's say someone has 2 beers. His BAC will be higher if he drinks both beers in 1 hour instead of spreading them out over 2 hours. You may have heard that eating something while drinking can stop you from getting drunk. You may even know someone who eats an entire loaf of bread, drank half a gallon of milk, or ate a stick of butter hoping to soak up the alcohol or coat the stomach lining to prevent the absorption of alcohol. Of course, none of these prevent alcohol from being absorbed into the bloodstream. Food consumption before or during drinking can affect when the BAC peaks by slowing the rate at which alcohol is absorbed into the bloodstream. However, eventually, all the alcohol will make its way into the bloodstream. Although other factors can affect BAC, these 4 have the most impact. Another factor in how high one's BAC rises is male versus female. There is a difference between male and female BAC levels. Generally, females' BAC will be higher, given equal amounts of alcohol and the same body weight. The reason why it takes longer for females' bodies to eliminate alcohol is because they have less of an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase. Our third question: light beer has fewer calories and less alcohol than regular beer. Typically, the alcohol in light beer is about 25% less than traditional beer. Probably not a big difference when talking about 1 to 2 drinks, but the difference can add up over an evening of drinking one versus the other. You may be asking why we are discussing light beer versus regular beer, and the answer may be surprising. About 80% of people who are charged with a DUI or DWI had been drinking beer. So many people seem to believe that it is okay to drive after drinking beer, but it is never okay to drink and drive. The issue is that many believe that beer is weaker than other alcoholic beverages like whiskey, wine, or other spirits. The truth is, depending on how a beverage is mixed and what size is served, beer could be just as strong as other alcoholic beverages. For example, a 12-ounce beer with 5% alcohol had 0.6 ounces of pure alcohol. Beer equals 12 ounces times 5% alcohol equals 0.6 ounces of alcohol. Whiskey equals 1.5 ounces multiplied by 40% alcohol, which equals to 0.6 ounces of alcohol. As we just showed you, beer is not necessarily weaker than mixed drinks. In most situations, beer is just as strong. The bottom line is, beer is strong enough to cause impairment. So those who believe that beer will not increase one's BAC as much as a mixed drink are lying to themselves and setting themselves up for a DUI arrest or worse. The fourth question was whether a driver could be charged with a DUI or DWI with a blood alcohol concentration below 0.08%. The answer is yes. An individual can be charged with a DUI or DWI with a BAC under 0.08. A driver can be charged with a DUI for any BAC over 0. In most states, there are two definitions of intoxicated. The first and most known definition of intoxication is having a BAC over 0.08. The BAC is typically measured by breath or blood. The second definition is much more subjective and relates to an individual's loss of regular use of mental or physical faculties because of alcohol or other drugs. The DUI is based on how the individual acts and their behavior, not a BAC number. In Tennessee, if the officer finds that you exhibited signs of intoxication during the field tests and has probable cause to believe you were driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, you may be arrested for a DUI offense. An arrest does not mean an automatic conviction. So, a driver could be charged with a DUI or DWI without submitting to a test that would produce a specific numerical indication of intoxication. In Tennessee, laws regarding DUI are taken very seriously. First-time offenders with a BAC greater than 0.08 but less than 0.2 will serve between 48 hours to 11 months in jail, and a BAC of 0.2 and greater will serve 7 consecutive days in jail. First-time offenders' licenses will be revoked for 1 year and must participate in an alcohol and drug treatment program. They will pay a fine between $350 to $1,500 and have an ignition interlock device installed for at least 1 year. The typical cost for an initial DUI offense in Tennessee can be as much as $4,900. Penalties and fees increase with each subsequent DUI violation. Drinking and driving do not mix. Unfortunately, even though they know driving after drinking alcohol is unsafe and illegal, some people still get behind the wheel impaired and put themselves and everyone around them at risk. Remember, your world could end with a sip of one drink. The fifth question asked was if the first ability affected by alcohol was reaction time. The truth is, the first ability affected by alcohol is a person's judgment, their ability to make sound decisions. Even a BAC as low as 0.02, about 1 drink, our judgment can be affected, well before the alcohol affects our muscle control such that our reaction time changes. First, alcohol affects our decision-making ability. Our ability to make sound decisions is hindered when our judgment is clouded by alcohol. Reaction time, specifically our muscle control, is the second ability affected. By the time a drinker exhibits visible signs of impairment due to partial loss of muscle control, their decision-making abilities are already impaired. One study shows a 0.08 BAC decreases reaction time by 120 milliseconds. So, a drunk driver traveling 70 miles per hour will travel an additional 12 feet before reacting to a roadway hazard. The third ability to be affected by alcohol is our vital functions, such as breathing and heartbeat. As the BAC increases, our ability to operate a vehicle safely decreases as drivers use a variety of abilities to operate a motor vehicle. One of the first mental abilities to be compromised by alcohol is our ability to divide our attention while driving. This happens with BACs as low as 0.02. That is only one drink for an individual of medium body weight. The ability to keep our car tracking in the correct lanes and our complex reaction time is affected when we hit a 0.05 BAC. That's 2 to 3 drinks for an individual of medium body weight. When BAC hits 0.06, our ability to process information is affected, and by 0.08, our perception ability declines. Our ability to remain safe on the road involves seeing the traffic scene, determining what is and is not a hazard, putting together a plan to avoid the hazard, and executing timely evasive maneuvers. Alcohol obstructs our ability to see and properly evaluate hazards, the capacity to design a reliable escape route, and finally, our capability to perform evasive maneuvers effectively. Even at low alcohol levels, our driving performance is impaired, and because alcohol affects our judgment and decision-making early on, we are not making accurate assessments about how the alcohol is affecting our driving. Drinking and driving do not mix. We hope you now have a deep understanding of how alcohol affects one's blood alcohol concentration and how elevated BACs affect our driving ability. The sixth statement we looked at was, on average, the body eliminates alcohol at a rate at 1 drink per hour. The answer was false. Now, let's examine how the body removes alcohol from the bloodstream. The fact is it takes longer for the average body to eliminate each drink. The old rule of thumb, 1 drink per hour, is a myth, and a dangerous myth at that. This myth may have contributed to some drivers thinking they were sober when they still had enough alcohol in their bloodstream to affect their driving abilities. While 1 drink per hour is a convenient formula, it's just wrong. It takes between 1 hour and 15 minutes and 1.5 hours or longer for the body to eliminate the alcohol contained in just one standard-sized drink. To demonstrate what that looks like in a real drinking scenario, if a male starts drinking at 9 p.m. and averages 2 drinks an hour by 11 p.m., his BAC has risen to about 0.07%. He continues to drink until 1:30 a.m. and calls it a night and goes to sleep. When you consider his BAC will continue to rise for at least 30 minutes after he finishes drinking. This is because it takes a while for alcohol to be fully absorbed into the bloodstream, causing his blood alcohol concentration to rise even higher. Finally, at 2 o'clock in the morning, his BAC will peak at 0.16%, twice the legal limit in Tennessee. From then on, it is all elimination, and his BAC will begin to fall at the average rate of 0.015% per hour, or about 3/4 of a drink per hour. As he sleeps, his body continues to eliminate the alcohol, but at a relatively slow rate when compared to how fast it rises. By the time 7:30 a.m. rolls around, our guy still has a BAC of 0.08%, is still legally intoxicated, and has a problem if he must go to work or needs to drive somewhere. By 9:30 a.m., his alcohol level had fallen to 0.05%, which is still too high to be driving. It's not until 1 p.m. the following afternoon that he is back down to a sober state with a 0 BAC. It has been 11.5 hours since he stopped drinking. Even at this point, he may still be impaired by the effects of a hangover. The bottom line is that it takes much longer for the body to eliminate alcohol than most people think. A scenario like this could happen because the next day the drinker is comparing how they feel to the worst they felt the previous evening. They probably feel better now, but that doesn't mean they are sober. Their judgment may still be affected by alcohol, so they are still not making good decisions. You may have heard people say a cold shower, coffee, food, or exercise will help speed up the elimination of alcohol in the body, but none of these things cause the body to remove alcohol any faster. Time is the only thing that removes alcohol from the body. Eliminating alcohol is a process. The body eliminates approximately 8% of alcohol by breathing, 2% by sweating, 90% by oxidizing it through the liver. The liver does most of the work because alcohol is a toxin. After all, the word for being drunk is intoxicated. Your body views alcohol as a poisonous substance that is harmful to the normal function of its systems. Since alcohol is a toxin, the body starts filtration as soon as it enters the bloodstream. But as we discussed, it is a prolonged process. Most people are surprised to learn how long it takes the body to remove alcohol from the bloodstream. The fact is that it can take a long time for the body to get rid of the alcohol, much longer than it takes to get the alcohol to work itself into the body. In fast and out slow. Alcohol is supposed to be the life of the party, right? But when it comes to driving, it is more like the opposite. The fact is, drinking and driving do not mix. The safest policy is to separate drinking from driving. If you do plan on drinking, plan on using alternatives to driving after you drink alcohol, like drink at home, staying with a friend, take a taxi, use a rideshare, use a designated driver. The designated driver should be sober, not just the person in the group who consumed the least amount of alcohol. Of course, it makes sense to develop any plans before you start drinking since alcohol affects your judgment and decision making early. Although alcohol is a drug, it is not the only one capable of impairing our driving ability. Plenty of other drugs don't mix with driving. Other drugs that affect your driving ability are depressants, which reduce arousal and stimulation. Some other types of depressants are Xanax, diazepam, and Klonopin, to name just a few. Stimulants like amphetamines and cocaine, hallucinogens like mushrooms or LSD, opioids like heroin, OxyContin, or fentanyl, to name a few, and inhalants. although alcohol remains the drug consumed by the majority of drivers convicted of a DUI. But other drugs affect mental and physical abilities as well. Research is clear. Drugs and driving do not mix. When using any drug, you should consider the effects and the effect it might have on your ability to perform even routine tasks, and especially how it affects your ability to drive. Drugs can be divided into 3 basic categories. They are prescription medications, non-prescription or over-the-counter drugs, and illegal or illicit drugs. Medications prescribed by a medical professional can produce side effects that can impact your ability to operate a motor vehicle safely. Any single prescription drug could be powerful enough to cause driving impairment, and combining drugs could make things much worse. It is worth noting that just because a doctor prescribes a drug does not mean a driver cannot be charged with impaired driving. It doesn't matter what the drug is. Driving while impaired by a drug can result in being charged with a DUI. To be safe, inform your doctor about any other medications you are taking. The more your doctor knows, the better they will be to prescribe an effective medication with a low risk to your health or driving ability. Over-the-counter medicines, such as throat lozenges, cough and cold remedies, and allergy relief medicine, like prescription medications, can affect your driving abilities. Before taking any drug, read the label carefully to see what side effects there are, if any, and what effect they may have on your ability to drive. Keep in mind that many over-the-counter medicines contain high amounts of alcohol too. Nighttime cold medicines are one example. Sleep aids also hold a high potential to affect driving skills as well. In general, medications do not necessarily prevent you from driving. But knowing the facts about medications you take, understanding the potential risks, and managing them appropriately will help minimize any effects they could have on your driving. Some things that would be good to know about a new prescription, and you should ask your health professional, are the drug's effect on driving ability, how long will the side effects last, any side effects such as drowsiness, how will it interact with other medications you are currently taking, should driving be avoided for a time after starting the medication. Like legal drugs, most illegal and illicit drugs act on the central nervous system. Illicit drugs are against the law to possess or consume. Illegal drugs are legal prescription drugs, but in the possession of someone other than to whom it was prescribed. The most common types of illegal and illicit drugs are stimulants, depressants, and hallucinogens. The third category of drugs that affect your driving ability are illegal and illicit drugs, such as marijuana or cocaine, as well as prescription drugs sold legally or to people for whom they were not prescribed. Illicit drugs are dangerous for many reasons. One obvious danger is that you don't know their exact content or strength. Unlike prescription or over-the-counter medicines, illicit drugs don't come with labels. There is no way to predict exactly how someone will react, and it is easy to take far more than someone intended. Study after study has confirmed that your ability to drive safely could be negatively affected by these drugs. Some of the effects include decreased perception abilities, impaired judgment, poor decision making, slowed reaction times, reduced coordination. Cannabis users reported a decreased ability to judge time, slowed reaction time, decreased their ability to maintain control of a vehicle, reduced their ability to respond to an emergency situation. They also reported that they often became drowsy, had difficulty judging space and the speeds of other road users, and could only concentrate on one object at a time, ignoring all other objects. As you can see, these effects add up to a driver's risk increasing dramatically, as well as those sharing the road. While having a single drug in one system can increase a driver's risk substantially, some people get behind the wheel with more than one drug in their body, and that's even more trouble waiting to happen. That's because someone who takes multiple drugs could experience an interaction among the drugs where their combined effects are greater than the sum of the individual effects of each drug. This is called a synergistic effect, and, if experienced while driving, can result in a much greater chance of experiencing a collision. For example, for many people, combining one joint of cannabis with 2 beers has about the same impact on their driving abilities as drinking 6 beers. The takeaway is this: avoid taking illegal or illicit drugs, which are even more likely to affect your ability to drive safely. Traffic presents enough challenges to your safety. Driving impaired increases your chances of a collision exponentially. One of the biggest safety concerns for drivers is how alcohol and other drugs can affect one's driving abilities. Some medications can severely affect driving abilities, including prescription and over-the-counter medications. In fact, a driver could be charged with a DUI or similar charge if a drug impairs them, any drug, not just alcohol. Tennessee does not differentiate between alcohol and other drugs when it comes to impaired driving. According to Tennessee law, a person is guilty of a DUI if they drive or are in physical control of any motor-driven vehicle under the influence of any intoxicant, marijuana, or narcotic drug to become impaired, and in addition, the chances of being involved in a crash can increase more than 10 times during the first week of using some prescription drugs. To complicate matters and add to the uncertainty, drugs can affect various people in different ways, or a drug may affect a person differently each time it is used. That is why it is so important to understand how single or multiple drugs can affect driving abilities. Of course, it is also critical to avoid driving after consuming any amount of alcohol. Regardless of the type, drugs are designed to affect the body's performance in one way or another. This is not a public service announcement against prescription drugs or your doctor's medical assessment. We need to prevent any drug from negatively affecting our driving ability. It is okay to take medications that negatively affect driving abilities. However, you need to avoid driving when taking them. It is in everyone's best interest to think carefully about the use of all drugs, liquid or solid, legal or illegal. There is no question that illegal and illicit drugs can easily cause one's driving skills to become impaired and actually threaten one's overall health.